Oh, those aren't sure. Yes.
We're about to start.
Hello down there. No, I just did that.
No froggy?
All right.
But maybe you have that thing that's going around.
No, don't even mention it.
I don't have time for that either.
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay, let me call to order the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency's meeting for today, August 27th. Director Bennett's going to be running about 5 to 10 late, but we'll go ahead and get started. If you'll please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. Mike, if you'll lead us.
Please follow me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call.
Chair Mulhart?
Here.
Director Craven? Here. Director Kelly?
Here.
Director Borchard?
Here. Okay, and I had mentioned that Director Bennett is just running a few minutes late. He's coming from Camarillo. Agenda review, any changes to the agenda? Okay, no changes. Any members have any changes? Okay. Motion to approve the agenda. Second?
Second.
Okay, any objection? Okay, it's so ordered. Public comments, opportunity for the public to address the board on non-agenda items. John.
Good afternoon. John Matthews, Pleasant Valley County Water District. First of all, the staff's website is very user-friendly. Even I can use it, and it's great. The videos get up there very quickly, and it's easy to deal with. One thing I'd like to suggest to the board, I know you can't act on it today, but to consider would be some type of a legislative news if the agency is carrying any legislative initiatives up to Sacramento. If that could be put on the website so that we could look at it. Some of our districts are smaller districts that don't have a staff that has like a legislative analyst that's up in Sacramento looking at things. And I know you try to keep the public up to date on what's going on, but if there's a specific legislation that you're trying to get through in Sacramento, it'd be easier for guys like me to check the website. So,
Okay,
thanks.
good. Tully, did you guys copy that? Okay. All right. Anybody else in the public comments? Brian.
Chair Mulhart, directors. Just a brief follow-up on the conversation about groundwater modeling from the last meeting. Just wanted to provide an update. You might recall from Tony Morgan's presentation the different steps in the modeling process, different data gathering, developing your geologic model, preparing your inputs, building of the actual model, and then use of the actual model. As I mentioned briefly, we were completing the data gathering stage. And I just wanted to update you and let you know that Callegas has issued an RFP to take on the next stage of developing the geologic model. And in the spirit of the cooperation that we talked about at that last meeting, just wanted to let you know we've invited staff to participate in the consultant selection process. GMA staff as well as United have been invited to be on the interview panel. And we've also written into, actually have copies here, for your records. On page 2, you'll see that we've specifically told the consultants that may propose on this phase of work that we expect them to work closely with Callegas, the GMA, and United. So I just wanted to make sure that you heard that that's our approach and what we intend to do.
Okay, thanks, Brian, for that.
I'm sorry, could you please state your name and affiliation of
Brian Bondi, Callegas.
Okay. All right. Not that we don't know who you are, but it's for the tape. There you go. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Any other public comments? Board member comments? I was slow to the uptake. Bob Aranio, Andy Waters are in the alternates there in the audience. I don't see any other alternates. Okay. All righty, very good. Let's go to item number 1, approval of minutes.
Move the approval.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Let's do it as a roll call because I'm going to abstain. I wasn't at that meeting, so just do it that way.
Chair Mulhart?
Abstain.
Director Craven?
Yes.
Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Borchard?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to item number 2.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mulhart and directors. For the record, my name is Kathleen Rydell. I'm here to present item 2, the agency annual report for calendar year 2013. You have received a hard copy of the annual report. It should be before you. And the electronic version will be posted on the website following your board's direction to staff to receive and file the report. The annual report describes the agency's technical, administrative, and groundwater management and fiscal activities for the year. Details are presented in the 2013 annual report, and I will present key points today in this presentation. Figure 4 is taken from the annual report. As you can see that rainfall for 2013, the average of 5 weather stations was 3.5 inches. And this is 75% below the average, long-term average. Thank you. Extractions were above the long-term average at 151,641 acre-feet. This is the highest extractions reported since 1990. And then the data was pulled on August 11th. All data presented in this report was pulled on August 11th, with 12% of the operators still not yet reporting. So extractions are above average and rainfall is below average. Evapotranspiration was approximately 5% below the long-term average. This illustration shows the groundwater basins. The colors of the basins reflect groundwater extractions from that basin. The basins with the highest groundwater extractions were the Oxnard Plain Basin, followed by the East Las Posas Basin. The pie charts show the type of water, or the use of the water extracted, agriculture versus M&I or domestic. Agriculture is shown in green %, and then M&I is in gray. And if you could see the domestics, which are less than 1% of the total groundwater extracted in 2013, it would show up as blue. So agricultural extractions in 2013 accounted for 71% of the total extractions. In accounting for the extractions, the total available allocation AHA plus baseline was 121,087 acre-feet, and the reported extractions of that, of the total extractions of 151,641, 66,000, a little over that, can be accounted for and reported as AHA plus baseline using allocation. The green are allocations developed through the Irrigation Allowance Program. The darker green is those operators that did not use their AHA plus baseline, and the extractions, the light green, had no AHA or baseline to back them up, so they were just using the irrigation allowance. So the total extractions associated with the Irrigation Allowance Program is 64,086 acre-feet, And the irrigation allowance program accounted for 42% of the total extractions for 2013. There were 174 irrigation allowance applications filed. Of those, only one was denied and 18 were in review at the time the data was pulled. The gold color is credits that were used in 2013. And then the red reflects overpumping, over extraction, and surcharges. Those may disappear as operators file irrigation allowance applications. This graph, figure 8 in your annual report, is the accumulation of conservation credits earned. A total of 17,842 acre feet of credits were earned, conservation credits. From the previous graph, you could see that a total of, it was 18,820 credits were used. There were, if you subtract the 18,000 from the 17,000, you come up with a net earned credits of minus 978 acre feet. The accumulated total is 724,949 acre feet. During 2013, a total of 15 well permits were issued, and as of the end of 2013, there were 1,279 wells identified within the agency boundary, and of those, 699 wells were reported as active. Highlights for 2013, the agency amended the ordinance code with the adoption of Ordinance 8.7. The agency also adopted 3 resolutions. These are included in the annual report as Appendix A. The agency reviewed the final draft version 1 of the Las Posas Basin-specific groundwater management plan. It also reviewed the North Pleasant Valley Desalter Groundwater Analysis and Modeling Report. It also reviewed the Ventura County Waterworks District Number 1 Moore Park Wastewater Treatment Plant Reclaimed Water Distribution System Phase 4 Administrative Draft Initial Study.
That was easy for you to say, wasn't it?
Don't say it too fast.
Can you actually say that backwards? Somebody told me you could do that, right?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, docious-ally-expiasticfragicalarupus. That's the best I can do.
That's very good.
Okay, highlights. Approved subgrant agreement for joint Proposition 84 focused planning grant for 2 projects. The agency and the board provided letters supporting the application for the Proposition 84 implementation grant funding for City of Camarillo's Northeast Pleasant Valley Groundwater Basin Desalter Project. The agency staff completed the Irrigation Allowance Index training videos. We posted them to the website, and we mailed out an Irrigation Allowance Index newsletter. Significant effort continued on multiple ordinance code compliance issues. In 2013, the 2011 and 2012 annual financial audit was completed and a biennial audit schedule was adopted. The agency account files were digitized, and the 2012 annual report and 2012 annual basin management objective report cards were completed. And I'd like to note that in Appendix B of the annual report for 2013 are the 2013 Basin Management Objective Report cards. In addition, staff developed a series of regional potentiometric surface maps. Those maps are included in the annual report as Appendix C. And here I'm showing the fall 2013 Upper Aquifer System potentiometric surface maps. These, the 2013 upper and lower potentiometric surface maps were developed following the same format style. They're the last 2 in your annual report. are the 2013. And so we followed the same data selection process. We took it to the technical group that reviewed the water level trends maps that were presented to the board in December 2013, and received comments and then responded to the comments. So this is after technical review. So here's the upper aquifer system map, and here is the lower aquifer system map for 2013. Are there any questions?
Any members have any questions?
Just perhaps a suggestion that in the future, it might be easier for people looking at the maps if there were a few main streets labeled, like Wainimi Road and Las Posas Road. And
I know we made an effort based on committees. It was Bennett's suggestion to make sure we had the landmarks, the city names, and the roads on there, but we don't have them labeled.
Okay. Anybody in the audience have any questions or comments? As you go through, over the years, as I've gone through these annual reports, technology has jumped by leaps and bounds. The color graphics are really significant and I think very helpful in the process. I specifically like the pie chart, one of the early pie charts you showed about the different areas and the breakdown of water that's extracted in each, and the pie chart associated with that. The trend lines, figure 4 and figure 5, I think are helpful to give a macro look at what's going on. So overall, as I go through this whole report, the whole presentation and the report, it's just amazing how much the color graphics lend itself to being able to see what's going on. So I compliment staff for the work that you guys have done in this process. And as I said, as I look at the different items we've had over the years, we didn't have certain technologies way back some umpteen years ago, and it makes a huge difference. So anyway, I'm pleased.
I would like to state for the record, in the board letter, it states that the average annual extractions was 122,000. The number presented in the annual report and on figure 4 is correct. It's 122,000, and I think it's 631 acre feet. So the 631 acre feet is the discrepancy between the board letter and what's presented in the annual report. Yes, it's on figure 4, the upper box has the correct value.
Okay. Again, anybody in the audience have any questions? Jürgen.
Oops. So it's this number here, it's correct in the annual report. It was an error in the board letter.
Okay. Jürgen's behind you. Jürgen.
Jürgen Gramko, grower in Oxnard. I would just like to pose a question. It just struck me when I was looking over this report. In the driest year we've had in 50 years or however long, we are still generating 17,000 acre feet of credits. And I just wonder whether somebody at the staff level could look into where that's coming from. I mean, you would expect, and under these very dry circumstances, that a lot of water would be being used, and how do you get the credits?
I can answer, because I think maybe like minds think alike. I was looking at it during lunchtime. If you look in Table 5, in any event, there's a lot of allocation out there. We have 140,000 available allocation. When you have a lot of allocation, and it's not all utilized, you'll generate a credit. It's one explanation. Plus, of course, credits on balance that folks can use.
Well, it just struck me. I mean, I'd have to dig into it deeper, just sort of defy
Logic.
common sense. How does this happen?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Steve.
First, this is a good report, and it highlights the real critical pieces of information that I think you need to have as we move forward. So this is healthy for the public to be able to see, for all of us to be able to see. So my compliments to staff for pulling this together. I think it's in many ways it's concise with the graphs. The second point I would like to make is that it's pretty sobering. I mean, if you sit here and you have 151,000 acre feet pumped last year, if you have that low a rainfall, this report suggests we're a long ways from where we need to be to get this basin into equilibrium. And it's sobering, before Jurgen even came up, I wanted to say it's sobering to see credits still growing and 700,000 acre feet of credits out there. I mean, we just, you know, we have some real difficult issues, and we all know it, and we have we're marching towards a game plan of doing something about it, but there will need to be hard decisions coming up when you look at this data that's out there in terms of what we're trying to do with our every month, trying to get further along in terms of our process to identify what are those hard decisions and what decisions are we going to make. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Jared Bouchard, excuse me, Jared Bouchard, Channel Islands Beach Community. Just with the discussion about credits, I just hope, it sounds like credits are such a bad thing. And I'm not here to talk about credits one way or another, but the conversation, as I sit back there as an agency who has made investment into this groundwater basin along with our partners in the Port Hueneme Water Agency, those credits that we continue to develop through those dry years are only accomplished through the work and investment that we made into the basin that benefited everybody else. We weren't maximizing our historical allocation and pumping. That's done through supplemental water supply. So it's important that we keep that in mind when we look at these things as a disturbing picture, that there was a lot of good work that went into the accomplishment of that. I know that it's an unsustainable thing and we need to have those frank discussions, but I don't want us to go forward forgetting to recognize the good work that folks within this region have already done to help us get as far along as we are, and that's kind of what that shows to those of us that have made some investment in it and that we're still building credits. That's because we quit pumping that water that we had rights to pump. So I hope that we don't forget that as we have these conversations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd just like to say one thing as we're on the issue of credits there, and that is that I appreciate the comment. I mean, if somebody has historical allocation and they do things so that they don't pump the water, that's good, and you want to reinforce that, and that's what sort of the credit system was designed to do. But if the allocations are 140,000 acre feet, and then some of those people don't pump that, but at the same time we have other ways that people are able to pump, we're actually pumping more than the historical allocation because of irrigation efficiency and all that. Complicated issue, right? Thank you.
Okay. All righty. Do we need a motion to receive and file?
So move.
Okay. Motion and a second.
Second.
Okay. It's a motion item. Let's do a roll call then.
Chair Mulhart?
Yes.
Director Craven?
Yes.
Director Bennett?
Yes.
Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Borchard?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to item 3.
Good afternoon, Chair Mulhart, Board of Directors, Gerhard Hubner, Watershed Protection District. I'm going to help out our clerk of the board today on this particular item. This is adoption of your 2014 Conflict of Interest Code. We have that presentation of just two slides and then the recommendation. So the Political Reform Act requires each agency to adopt a Conflict of Interest Code and review and amend as needed every even-numbered year. The Ventura County Board of Supervisors is that code reviewing body for this agency's Conflict of Interest Code and is required to review and approve the agency's code this year. Item 3B of this staff report includes the agency's proposed conflict of interest for your board's consideration today. The government code section requires all officials who manage public investments to disclose in their Form 700 their economic interests pursuant to the Political Reform Act. Selecting the Board of Supervisors, clerk of the board's office as the filing officer will provide time savings to the agencies, as you'll be able to use their Form 700 e-disclosure or e-filing application utilized by the county clerk. In addition, the clerk of the board office will be responsible for providing all the notifications to the agency's filers and performing all other duties associated with being the filing officer. So our recommendation today is you adopt this 2014 Code of Interest Code for the Fox Canyon GMA and approve the chair to sign the 2014 local agency biennial notice. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for staff? Any comments from the public?
Move the approval.
Okay, motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call?
Chair Mulhart?
Yes.
Director Craven?
Yes.
Director Bennett?
Yes.
Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Borchard?
Yes.
Okay, let's deal with item 4.
I could have this presentation.
Gerhard, could you come up, please?
Moving right along.
I always like saying that, I'm sorry.
This is item number 4, our revised list of needed information for the issues and problems for developing measures to ensure agency sustainable groundwater management. As I've been in front of you before, this is an outcome of our April 11th board meeting where the board approved a plan and process for developing measures to assure long-term sustainable groundwater management from the agency's groundwater basins and aquifer systems within its jurisdiction. The goal is to identify all the major issues and problems, relevant information about those issues and problems, and develop recommended solutions from the board to consider. As you recall, 4 basic steps: adoption of list of issues and problems, identification of the information needed for each of the issues and problems, identification of potential initial solutions, and then listing the advantages and disadvantages for each potential solution. Again, some more background. The draft initial list was developed by agency staff, presented at your May meeting. It was organized by issue, description of issue, category of issue, and priority ranking. Under each description column, we provided a narrative with the problem statement or statements to articulate the problem as clear as possible. And then at your board meeting in June, you adopted this revised list. Moving along, at your July meeting, the board was presented a draft list of needed information. Again, building upon the same table format utilized in the draft list of issues table, we modified it to include new columns with means of obtaining the information, some cost range estimates, measures, actions, and methods, and a timeline. In addition, we included narrative, descriptive information in each column with our best professional estimate of the internal and external sources of information, range of costs, and methods and actions to obtain this information, and the time as well. The conclusion of this meeting, the board voted to accept the draft list, but directed that the following be added: a legal analysis, internal and external, to B3, the credit storage and in lieu section. And I want to remind the board that the various columns represent level of effort in the acquisition of the information, not necessarily the amount of level of effort needed to complete or solve a particular issue. So after the board meeting, directly right after the board meeting, we modified the table and we released it for a 3-week public review and comment with a deadline of August 13th, 2014. We received 3 sets of comments by this deadline from United Water Conservation District, the Las Posas Users Group, and Golden Ring Employer Law Firm. And we've included all those comment letters with this item. We did receive yesterday a comment letter from Ventura Coastkeeper, which, Jessica, did we distribute copies? Okay. Anyway, they came after the comment period ended, but we can provide those comments if you would like. We did review all these comment letters. In general, we found most of the comments received related to the specific issue or problem, or an opinion on that particular issue or problem versus the adequacy of the range of costs or efforts or the reasonableness of the needed information contained in the table in the various columns. Therefore, while these were very good comments, in most of the cases, they're probably more appropriate later in this long-term process. In addition, we found a common thread in the LPUG comments, which requested time and resources for stakeholder process and technical review committee. We previously did recognize that there would be significant stakeholder input and resources necessary for that. We could, to address this comment, put additional time or hours to each box, or globally just state we recognize that this is something that will require effort, and just leave it as a footnote. Furthermore, I had a conversation with United staff where I went through each of the comments in their table and did some clarification on either intent or clarification, or in many, many cases we agreed with their comments. And I also asked if they thought the values were reasonable. I think they say they generally agreed. If not, in some cases, the staffing seemed to be a little bit understated. We also agree with all the commenters that any existing data, reports, studies, and any ongoing efforts would be utilized first and foremost. We're not looking to duplicate any effort. If there's existing information out there, we could certainly go to that first and avoid any duplication of effort. So with that, we recommend today you approve the revised list of this needed information with modifications as appropriate based on the comments you receive or any comments that the board may wish to make. With
Okay.
that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, members.
I have a question for,
Okay.
I have a question for Cayugas based on the comment letter that they submitted. So, Brian, if you could.
No, Kiegas.
But just to clarify, although it came from my email, it was on behalf of the Los Postos Users Group, so those
Oh, okay.
comments did not
Okay.
necessarily reflect
Yeah,
Cayugas'
I'm sorry, I did see the, all right, so this is from
But I'm-
Los Postos Users Group?
It is.
All right,
So
so
either Robert or I
probably,
could-
probably Rob, and you may want to stay close. And Brian, I did hear your comments about the contract that you mentioned before I got into the room about including everybody in that, so I just wanted to
Okay,
let
I'm
you know I
glad you
heard that. and
I
so
was
appreciate
a little disappointed you weren't here, but I'm glad you heard it.
So
Thank
I
you.
did hear it.
And he passed out a letter that
Yeah,
has the
it has
proposal
that
in it.
stuff too, so, good.
Okay.
I don't have that right there.
Good afternoon, Robert Arani on behalf of Los Postos Basin Users Group.
Good afternoon, Rob. My question regarding your comment letters, number one, thanks for taking the time. I think a lot of good comments in there that are helpful. In your C4 comment, it says number one in C4, and then it says, so it's at the bottom of page 2 of 4. Are you with me there?
There we go, much better.
Good. So
Thank
your
you. Yes, sir.
So your last two sentences, the key is to identify the safe pumping levels in a given depression and manage the basin according to those safe levels. To this end, item C4 should be closely tied to groundwater monitoring to provide the necessary data to show if and when a given depression is causing an undesirable effect. My question for you is, does Los Postos Users Group believe that that data exists and we just have to look at it, or we have to get that data? Is that data out there, or is that something we still have to go
The
out?
depression that we're primarily talking about there is on the east side of the West Los Postos Basin.
Right.
We do believe there is sufficient information and to know what kind of a reduction in pumping needs to be acquired in that area. We have good documentation from during the Cayugas and Lou period, from when there was a reduction in pumping and we saw water levels increase. So we feel that that data is available for it.
So-
We also happen to believe that not all depressions are bad. It does as a way that water will move around through the basin. So just because you have a depressed area or a area where water levels are lower than the surrounding area is not necessarily a bad thing. It's its effect on the other pumping around it and whether those effects are undesirable.
I saw that comment earlier that you had said that about the depression, but I wondered if you felt like they had the data. So thank you. That was
Thank
the
you.
question that I had.
Okay. Any other members have any? From a process, I have two comments. One is a process comment, and number two is a priority comment. Let me deal with the priority comment. If you read through LPUG's letter that is enclosed, and if you read through United's letter that Tony, you sent in, one of the common themes that you hear through that, and I suspect there's other people that are going to say the same thing, and I would suspect that I would say the same thing given the movement away from Emergency Ordinance E to some permanent ordinance that we're going to have to do. One of the fundamental questions that we have to resolve is safe yield, and I quote out of A2. Safe yield is foundational for establishing pumping allocations and should therefore be a short-term item with the highest priority. And they put it in bold. And I think, Tony, you essentially said the same thing, that we need to find out what these numbers really are, recognize that no system is perfect. I think that was one of the tones of Tony Morgan's letter from United, is that we could sit here trying to make a perfect model when in fact we have enough data now to get on with the process, and we'll adjust it as we go forward. And if we're going to move away from Emergency Ordinance E into something more permanent, and then out of that come up with this list of, on the supply side, if I said replenishment and use of surcharges and all kinds of things associated with how we then move that safe yield number up by bringing additional supply of water, all of it is predicated on finding that safe yield number and recognizing what is the hurdle we have to get us back up to a level that everybody is willing to pay for, and go through that process. So that's the comment. Now to the process. The task before us today, and correct me if I'm wrong, so I'm thinking out loud here as I tend to do. The process today is to adopt this draft list of needed information to move forward. And if you look at item A2 on page 1 of 13 of the staff's copy, it has safe yield determination. And it's going to take a considerable amount of time, and it has an intermediate term of 1 to 5 years. And in the process of adopting this today, we're adopting this timeline. Does that mean then that we have relegated it down to a lower priority, or can we adopt it, leave these timelines alone so we're not going through here and cherry picking timelines and trying to resort it on the fly, but recognize that this is the subject matter that we have to deal with, and at some point in time, as part of the management process of managing the process, we have the right to shift some of the priorities going forward. So I'm looking for some guidance. If we adopt this, are we locking ourselves into this? Or if we adopt this, we're essentially saying this is the subject matter, but timelines and sequencing still allow us to make adjustments as necessary. How do you guys interpret
Can I add a
it?
clarification?
Okay.
This list in particular isn't in any particular order in terms of priority. I think your board has, it's an overall list of issues, and in this case, information. Your board can prioritize it any way it wishes moving forward.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because I was going to make a comment that some of the short-term issues come after the intermediate issues, and so that's the way you designed it. So let me get some. Have I made myself? Have I raised
You
about
have, I think, and I would think that the board would not want to hamper itself by being strictly held to the listed timelines, because we may in fact find out that after we delve into things a little further, we may readjust that priority. Just for example, the safe yield thing. I think probably all of us can agree that's a relatively important one, but I think staff has conservatively put hard to kind of nail that down.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Anybody else on that?
I would just offer, and I want to ask staff if this is what you meant. Staff, when you put a timeline on there, like 1 to 5 years. My understanding is that was just from staff's perspective, what the fastest you could do it in, 1 year, and you know what would be sort of the
If you
the
had
far end.
far end, exactly, if there was
Yeah.
complications, perhaps a lot of input or revisions that
Yeah.
had to occur, further follow-up.
So it doesn't mean that because staff said they think that that's the fastest they can do it in, that we even agree that we might say, this is so important, we want to go, all
Apply
out.
resources.
We want this one done, and we don't care that you think it's going to take a year, we want you to do it in 4 months, right?
That's
But
correct.
whatever that is. So I don't think this prioritizes anything for us at this point in time. These timelines are just staff's estimate
right.
of the range of time they think that it would take. So there may be a number of things that are short-term that we may say, we don't want to do those short-term things right now. That doesn't mean that they're a priority. It just means staff says, if you want us to do them, we can do them quick. All right, but that doesn't mean we necessarily want them to do it just because they say short-term. It's just staff saying, this is what we could do in the short run.
If we had to do them all, yeah, that would, but if
Right.
you decided just
So-
to do a few, it could be shorter.
We will, as this comes together now, and now we're sort of at this point, we will have to start the process of prioritizing. But as we come up with these potential solutions that are going to be coming in the next month or so, that will help us start to say, hey, these are the particular data points that we need so that we can analyze this solution or that solution to the problems that we have. That's right. That's how I see it, if that
Okay.
from my perspective. You see it that way?
Right. Anybody in the audience? Tony?
I'm Tony Morgan with United Water. I would offer that it would really help staff and the stakeholders for the board to think about what your goals really are before you jump into determining what the safe yield or the sustainable yield of a basin is. What do you want to accomplish? And there was some dialogue presented in our letter about what do you want to do with seawater intrusion? There are some options. There are different ways to manage that. And what's the goal's preference? Because that's going to have an impact on how the sustainable yield is determined, and then what management strategies and what policies and what projects ultimately end up being developed to accomplish those goals. So there's some head noodling, there's some scratching that needs to be done. From my perspective, that the board needs to accomplish before we jump into determining what sustainable or safe yield might be. What do you want to get to? What's the end point we're trying to reach?
Okay. As I read through staff's letter on page 2 of 2, item 4, I think the 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph from the top in general, most if not all the comments received related to specific issue, problems, and or options on the issue or problem rather than the adequacy, range of costs, efforts, reasonableness, blah, blah, blah. Therefore, many of these items will be more appropriate later in the long-term planning process. And I think that captures essentially what we've said here, and I think it's important that we have this discussion so that folks in the audience and the constituents don't believe that, oops, this is the binding word. This is simply a guide, and we may have to make adjustments as we go along. And there may be, as Tony indicated, before we can actually get to the safe yield number, we need to have a staff, board, constituent discussion on what's our objective, and that defines what the safe yield is. And we may have to deal with that as one of the priorities. So the direction that staff has said is hear feedback from the board and stakeholders. Consider approval of the revised list of needed information with modifications as appropriate. So our task today is either to approve or send it back to staff. In either case, what we're saying is this is not ground in stone, right? There will be adjustments that go along. That's the prerogative of the board, and I think that's what everybody's agreeing to. Okay? That's kind of where we're going as I see it. Any comments? Can we have a motion to either approve or to send it back to staff? What is your pleasure?
I make the motion to approve this, and the process is working, we're getting feedback, we're building this information.
All right.
Second.
So motion and, who's the second? And the second. All right, let's have a roll call on that.
Chair Mulhart?
Yes.
Director Craven?
Yes.
Director Bennett?
Yes.
Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Borchard?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to item.
If I could just add
Yeah.
that I'm glad Tony Morgan came up and said what he did, because it was something I had meant to comment on. I was very appreciative of United's comments, and I thought they were very appropriate in the whole. And particularly that concept of deciding where we want to go before we head in the direction. I think that's very important.
Yeah, good. Okay. All righty, let's go to item number 5.
My pleasure to be presenting this item number 5. This is a request by United Water Conservation for a 12-month extension for payment of surcharges on extractions from its PTP system wells. Little background, in February of this year, agency staff received a request from United Water Conservation for a 12-month extension on payment of surcharges for exceeding extraction allocations from its PTP systems for calendar year 2013. The surcharges amount to $1,800,780, $509, based upon the pumping groundwater equal to 1,189 acre feet in excess of allocation for those wells. The over-extracted groundwater was pumped and delivered to United's PTP customers. Per the agency's ordinance code, those surcharges were due February 24th of this calendar year. The overpumping by United of the PTP system was primarily due to the lack of surface water in 2013 and also due to the lack of the fall conservation release as well as historic drought conditions. The PTP system was designed to supply surface water supplemented with groundwater to customers on the Oxnard Plain that would otherwise be pumping the upper aquifer system. And again, due to the lack of surface water, United had to pump increasingly in order to supply its water to its PTP customers. Most recently, United also reported its extractions from its PTP well customers for the first half of calendar year 2014. United has also requested that those surcharges occurred for those customers also be considered in the similar 12-month payment extension. Presently, those 2014 surcharge amounts to a little over $5.5 million, upon which a little over 3,200 acre feet of overpumped groundwater for this period, again, was pumped and delivered to those PTP customers. And per the agency's ordinance code, these surcharges would be due next February. We've had a number of discussions with United staff in order to attempt to resolve this issue. On March 12th of this year, United's Board of Directors adopted a pumping trough pipeline suballocation and groundwater extraction surcharge policy. That's been included as part of your board package as item 5B. This policy allows the reallocation of credits from the PTP customers to United. United in turn would then transfer those credits and or cash, if there were insufficient credits in that account, to the agency by January 1st of 2015 to satisfy that calendar 2013 account surcharges. The agency has legal authority contained in its ordinance code, that's section 5861, that allows the extension of time to pay for surcharges for a period of 12 months when circumstances exist, in the opinion of the board, warrant such extension. The board may also approve installment payments of surcharges over a 24-month period with terms suitable to the board. And the board has done this in the past. Our recommendation today is twofold. We recommend an extension of time of 12 months for the payment of both the entire calendar year 2013 and first half of the year, calendar year 2014, extension of payments. If your board approved those, the surcharges would be due February 24th, 2015 for the first half of calendar year 2014, and the other half would be due February 24th, 2016. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any member have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You said we'd extended this for agencies in the past. When we extended, is there interest added to this, or?
I'm
I
trying
mean,
to
that's a
think.
good-sized loan, interest-free.
Right. I don't believe we added interest in those cases.
Okay.
In the case of, trying to think, we had a Spanish Hill settlement, we had the Miller enforcement case, we've had the Howling Nursery. I don't believe we added interest in those
Thank you.
cases.
And Director Craven, remember, technically it wasn't a loan. We didn't give him any money.
If I owe you $1,800,000 and you extended a year, it's often considered a loan.
I think we forgave the school district in
I think so, too.
El Rio, so.
Okay.
I have two questions for United, not for
United.
staff. Great. My one question, I'm trying to understand this. On the staff discussion, it says on March 12th, the United's Board of Directors adopted its pumping trough pipeline sub-allocation and groundwater extraction surcharge, item 5B. This allows the reallocation of credits from PTP customers to United. United will subsequently transfer those acquired PTP customer credits and/or cash to the agency to satisfy its outstanding account. So while I'm supportive of staff's recommendation to more time to work this out, because I know it's a complicated issue, that's United's policy. Did two things. One, did United come to Fox Canyon and ask if Fox Canyon approved this policy of transferring credits from the pumpers to United to use to pay for the overcharges?
Yes, Tony Emmert with United. I'm answering a question that's actually prior to my participation in United, but it's my understanding that there was staff discussion with agency staff that essentially agency staff had to be okay with the idea of using conservation credits to cover this.
That it would be okay to engage in the overpumping and use the conservation credits? How about the issue of just the fact that United was going to go ahead and do this pumping beyond the allocation?
I don't know if that was discussed ahead of time.
Okay, or whether this was afterwards. Right?
Yeah, I think Mike needs to address it. It's actually more complicated than that, so.
Mike Solomon,
Just
United
a little
Water.
bit.
Did you work for the? Did you work?
Yeah,
for
we
United
did.
when that happened?
We came and sat down with Jeff and Tully and Gerhardt, told them the situation, and we started recognizing that for 2013 and through August 1st or July 30th of this year, credits were still a payment for surcharge. So we had a lot of discussion. In fact, this has taken a while to get here because we were trying to figure out if there was a better way to handle this for good public policy. But in the end, we need to get this resolved because a lot of those people that did the overpumping last year are either not there or it's going to be hard to collect. If it gets too far down the road, they're going to say, why should I pay or why should I do anything? So we're just trying to get this resolved. And at the same time, we're working with the GMA staff, in particular Tully, how to not let this happen again with the future pumping. So we're on that.
I appreciate that you've had some conversation with staff. But my question is, did that conversation with staff happen? Number one, did any of this come to the board? I don't remember.
No, the initial discussions were, did this need to come to the board to determine, and Tully, correct me, did this need to come to the board, or is this something the executive director could approve by himself? And that's where we sort of got held up for a while, trying to figure out, is it better, does it need to go to the board, or does it need to go? And then there was some confusion that we clarified when we had that conference call where you guys called me, and a light went on to Jeff saying, oh, that's what you were trying to do. So to try to simplify this, no, it hasn't come to the board. It's been delayed a couple of times, and part of it was trying to decide, was it the board or the executive director that had the authority.
Okay, and so again, I realize that there've been a lot of conversations about what to do with this. I'm talking about before the pumping took place.
No.
Tony sort of,
No,
the pumping took place, and you didn't, nobody went to staff and said, we're thinking of doing this over pumping, and we want to make sure you guys aren't going to have a problem with how we want to do this.
The staff, GMA staff was aware of it because we took this to our board back in, August of last year, I believe, Lynn? And we said, hey, we're pumping these wells like heck, should we keep doing this? And the idea was on a short term, keep doing it until we could come up with some long-term fix. So the staff was aware of.
That was a decision of the United Board.
That's correct.
And staff was asked if it was okay, or just aware that that was a decision?
I think they were more frustrated by the fact that United delivered a lot of surface water and groundwater and weren't getting credits or allocations from the people we were delivering to. We were just delivering, and they were keeping the allocations and the credits. That's the way the system was set up, and that's what we have to try to resolve in the future so we don't run into these problems
And
again.
this policy that you adopted in March 12th of 2014, so about 6 months ago,
Yes.
policy item 5B, this policy allows for the reallocation of credits from the customers to United. That policy wasn't approved by this board. Was it approved by staff?
It was approved by our board, consistent with what the staff was trying to get us to do, and that was not let the receivers of the water be building up all these credits when we're providing surface water.
I think, first of all, there's been massive number of meetings between United and the GMA on this issue. I think originally, when we finally realized that people were accruing credits for surface water they delivered as part of the PTP system, that's what raised a red flag, and hence the overpumping, and where does that money come from? And then second of all, while we're trying to sort this particular problem out, and that's what the extension is about, how do we make sure that this doesn't go on in the future, and hence the policy that you just read in there that the United Board adopted. So we're working two problems simultaneously. I think the original assumption at United was that the GMA would take care of this credit issue. They don't have the ability to do that. So when we go back and we actually reconstruct this, we realize we have a problem on our hand. It's going to take us another period of time to sort it out. But let's put a marker down so that we understand how the game is going to be played going forward, and that's what the resolution on the 12th was. So.
And United has said, you're not delivering now.
We are still delivering water, but within a very short time, the wells are going to be shut down because they're going to have reached the lowest level that we really can pump without doing damage.
So you're incurring more over pumping
well,
charges?
right now, yes, we are. Right now,
you're
through July 31st, that number, through July 31st, which was before emergency ordinance goes into place for the irrigation index, the calculation was 6.2 million in surcharges that have been accrued. We are now into which, by the GMA ordinance, can either be covered via credits or money. And that's what we're trying to collect right now. We're trying to get, people are slowly sending in the transfer of credits to us so we can take care of it. All the pumping that's occurred since August 1st to now has to be paid. All the penalties or surcharge have to be cash. It can't be credits. So Tony and I are setting up a PTP meeting with folks right now saying, we've told them this, but understand this is money now. If you want water, you've got to pay these surcharges. We're in penalty phase. So we're trying to get that out. And I think Lynn brought up a good point, Director Bennett, is back in 2002, I had worked out an agreement with the previous GMA staff where we were providing all the accounting of the water and sending it to the GMA, and the GMA was going to transfer allocations and credits every 6 months so this problem would occur. That didn't occur and then 2008, I forgot, Gerhard was there. Yeah, 2008, they called me up and said, oh, by the way, we're not doing this. I went, whoa, because it was a different staff, and they said, we have no authority to do that. That put us behind the eight ball of how do we deal with this now? And so, yeah, we're working very hard with the staff to try to avoid the potential of building up credits, double pumping, or this overcharge, this surcharge issue in the future. But it's going to
Thank
take a while because it's 55 different contracts.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any other
And-
questions?
And I
Yeah.
might add, this highlights our next item. The fact of you had historical allocations that remained in place and didn't get transferred to the new supplier.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments on this item? The staff's recommendation is to, it's a motion that you need to extend this by the 12-month period, is that what you need? Or the,
Extend both of them by 12 months.
extend them both by 12 months, consistent with the timeline that you show up there, that's the recommendation? Okay.
Chair, one item I wanted to add before I couldn't answer the question. I was going to report that staff is actively working to resolve up to the July 31st and get that taken care of within the next 2 or 3 weeks instead of letting it drag on until the end of the year. So we're having very good response from the users. So we intend and fully anticipate that we'll be able to have this all taken care of within the next few weeks.
Okay, very good. All right. Can I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation of an extension of the timeline for United for 12 months of payment in both the entire calendar year, whatever that paragraph is up there?
First bullet.
Okay. A motion?
Second.
Oh,
Okay.
you can say.
A double second. Okay, any other questions? Roll call, please.
Chair Mulhart?
Yes.
Director Craven?
Yes.
Director Bennett?
Yes.
Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Borchard?
Yes.
Okay, let's deal with item 6. Rick.
Good afternoon, Chair Mulhart and directors. For the record, my name is Rick Virgutz. I'll be presenting item number 6 today. I just noticed my PowerPoint slide says 7. Ignore that. The title is Consideration of Policies for Adjusting Historical Allocations of Operators, Water Suppliers, who discontinue service to new well operators. One of the reasons we're here today is a response from a letter we received from the Los Pozos users group in July. Our appearance here is pretty timely with the letter, but this issue has actually been being discussed for quite a long time, as you'll see. Jessica, am I missing something here?
Europe.
There it goes. Okay. So,
Hold on. Reddy, you can't leave in the middle of this discussion. Do you realize that, don't you?
I was going to go get a piece of paper so I can make notes.
Oh, okay. I was afraid you were going to walk out on this big discussion. And
He's going down to Staples just down the block.
there he is. Oh, gosh, I thought we could pass something without having to hear from you, but I guess not, huh? I'm just kidding. So, all righty.
So currently the historic extraction allocations within the agency can be transferred with board approval. There's a number of ways that can happen, that transaction can happen. The slide mentions that the most common type, at least in terms of acre feet and transactions a year, is the ag to M&I transfer of historic allocation. That's when agricultural land gets converted to municipal land, and the agency transfers a historic allocation, typically to cities. But there are other kinds. There can be ag to ag transfers and M&I to M&I transfers. Less common for these transfers is to use them to avoid the imposition of surcharges, but that does happen, and you just heard about that issue with the United and the PTP customers. And the agency's requirements basically say that for any of these transfers, both parties have to agree, it has to be equitable, and they can be permanent or they can be temporary. So let me talk just in general about what happens to historic allocation when a water supplier customer discontinues use because they get a new well. Well, two things happen. Number one, with that new well permit, that customer gets an allocation from the GMA. Frequently, that's an efficiency allocation, but sometimes it's a baseline allocation. And in parallel, but not linked to that, the water supplier doesn't typically transfer historic allocation earned on that parcel to the new well owner. And because that allocation that was earned on the parcel by the water supplier, it's not retired, if you will, it stays within the water supplier's account. And that water supplier can use that elsewhere. So that's really what's referred to as the double dipping issue. And let me provide some more background on other potential double dipping issues. What I just described is what the Las Posas users group is concerned about. But there are some other issues. And I know I'm digressing, but this issue up on the slide right now would have applied to the United issue with the PTP customers as well. But when could transfers be made to avoid double dipping? There's actually a few scenarios. Other areas where transfers are not routinely made are when land is subdivided. The ordinance code suggests that allocations earned on wells should be split up when parcels are split. That's typically not done. Why? Well, the GMA doesn't review parcel splits, and I suspect that landowners aren't aware that this is something that's on the menu, if you will, that they should investigate. Another issue is when landowners stop the use of its well's historic allocation and receive water from a water supplier. So this would be the PTP example. And then the third bullet is related to discontinuing service. So when a water supplier discontinues service to a new well operator, it could transfer historic allocation to that new operator.
Could I ask you a question, Rick?
Yes.
In your second point there, when land is subdivided, it suggests that this be done, but in practice it's not done. There wouldn't be any incentive for property owners to do that, right? When land is subdivided, there would be, to actually...
Did you say there wouldn't be an incentive?
What is the incentive to go ahead and split the historical allocation between the two parties?
Well, in the GMA, the historic allocation resides on the wellhead. And so if it was developed on a 100-acre parcel during the base period, and that parcel were to split in half, if I were the owner of that new 50-acre parcel without the well, I might not be aware that the GMA rules would allow that allocation to be split and assigned to the parcel that I would be buying. So,
and if you don't get that allocation, you could put in a well and do irrigation efficiency?
That's right. That's right. That can happen.
That whole allocation could then stay for the 50 acres that was the original parcel.
That's correct.
Which would be another way, it's sort of another double dipping kind of.
That's right.
It's interesting, this issue that you raise, I'm going to say 10 years ago, I had a series of staff level meetings. Dr. Preston was on board at that time. John Matthews, Rob Saperstein, myself. I know Jurgen may have been at some of those meetings in United staff. And this exact scenario we talked about a lot. And that is, you have a parcel, 100 acres, one well irrigates the 100 acres. The historical pumping is 200 acre feet, we'll say. You divide the property in half. All of that water stays with 50 acres. No water goes to the 50 acres. So one guy now is operating under baseline or irrigation efficiency, and the other one has 4 times, 200 acre feet on a 50 acre parcel. And I will tell you, we spent a long time trying to figure out how to deal with this issue. And one of the things that came up in that whole discussion was we needed to know how land is transferred is it appropriate to transfer property and effectively leave property with no water allocation when in fact it was previously served from some source? And I thought at that time we had a workable solution. And it may be that we need to have that discussion again, because if it means that we have to come up with some way in the recording of a deed, maybe at a county level, I don't know, that says, what is your source of water? You have to certify. Again, I don't know how you do that, but somewhere along the line, this is a real problem of how do you have some kind of parcel split with one, the well is on one but not on the other.
What was the solution you came up with 10 years
Yeah,
ago?
that's what I was curious
you
about.
thought was
The end point is that the end point was, as I recall, and John has left, Jurgen, I don't know how many of those meetings you sat through, but I believe the end point was that no ground can be left without a source of water, and that the only logical thing would be that if water was supplying that property, then it needs to be prorated to however the property was split. So if the property was 100 acres and you split it 50-50, then it's 50-50. If it's 60, whatever that number was.
That's not happening.
But that didn't become Fox Canyon policy.
Well, I don't know if we had the authority to do that. I think maybe that was it. And Jurgen, do you recall this discussion? So let's hear from Jurgen on this issue.
Jurgen Gramko again. The issue is twofold. One is when private property is sold as separate parcels that may have previously been supplied by one well. And typically under that circumstance, buyers are pretty sophisticated enough to know that they want their proportionate amount of the allocation from the seller. And so I think that's ongoing pretty regularly, and those are the transfers that Rick is referring to, where you have two parties agree that we're going to split the allocation. You know, I have a 100-acre parcel, I'm selling 50, so I'm going to transfer 50% of the historical allocation. I think that's ongoing. The problem we had was reaching into mutuals. When a property is within a mutual company and has been historically served by a mutual company, and an owner decides that he wants to drill his own well, then he's got no allocation. The allocation belongs to the mutual company. And if the mutual company does not want to allocate out the historical allocation, then that property owner goes on efficiency. And so that's how you end up with a double dip. And we never did solve that because our fundamental premise was can't reach into mutuals.
Well, yeah, and that's going to address the fourth bullet down.
But
there.
the mutuals all have shares, and of course, you got a certain number of shares per acre, or however you do it. So you get a share of the mutual when you buy the property.
And maybe that's how you.
I mean, and then you can demand from the mutual
Great, thanks.
that they fulfill the obligation of the shares, or not. If it's less than 10 acres, they won't serve you. But I've had that happen numerous times, and I've also gone around and bought up orphan shares. But those people had switched over to Reddy's system, and he had no allocation on it.
So if I just want to ask, because I'm just trying to get informed, so if the person could demand it from the mutual, but if the person
Absolutely.
But if the person doesn't demand it from the mutual and instead they go on baseline and irrigation efficiency and they're getting adequate water from there, then the mutual could still use the allocation for other
Probably, but
purposes.
it hasn't been, in my experience, it hasn't been the mutuals that's the problem. It's more the public agencies. Any sophisticated buyer who's buying using farm credit, for instance, they're damn well going to get their water rights. And so I think this is a red herring in some ways. The problem, of course, is that if you have a person who's coming, and quite frankly, I'm glad Reddy would stay here, because the issue really became one of county waterworks and what portion, because they may not have that figured against that particular property. You know, how many acre feet was on that particular property. So I think we're chasing, but
as far as a deed restriction, Chairman Mulhart, sir, I really think we need something, because this goes back to those people who buy property and have no idea Fox Canyon even exists. There's nothing in disclosure with the disarray that the title industry is in today. Title searches today are near worthless. You know, Chicago is the only company I know in Ventura County right now that has an actual plant on site. Everything else is being hired out from another agency. So the problem comes is even if you had it recorded as a deed restriction, it might not show up on the title report. But at least that would give you a chance. So, you know, I would suggest that where you were headed previously was a place you should have gone, and that would have been to see somehow if you couldn't have a deed restriction. Because we've discussed this before, but I know of parcels that have sold where they didn't know it, the buyer, and I know of other parcels where the person declared they were in Fox Canyon and lost the sale because of it. So it's a sword that cuts in both directions.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Kelly. It's interesting, this very issue has come up on the PTP system we had, and I won't name any names, but we had a piece of property where the family members didn't get along. They split. There was a turnout from the PTP in one area on one side, not on the other. They asked for a turnout, we put it there. These people here are having to pay cash for the surcharge because they have no allocation. This side has too much allocation. They just turn in the credits to pay it off. And then we get into the double dipping portion. Now, this could put in, under the new way things are done, they could put a well over here, pump irrigation index. This side could pump their allocation and have so much lever over and build credits up, and then you start selling credits or moving credits around. We run into a problem, I agree. We've got to get something where if there's 100 acre feet for this parcel, it splits 50-50. 50 goes there and 50 goes there at least, so we're not double or creating that ridiculous amount of credits that then become a red herring too. But it's a big problem for us right now.
All right, Bob, before you...
A quick question. I mean, does GMA have the authority to administratively divvy up allocations when they are noticed of a property division?
Al?
Well, that goes to the fundamental question of what is an allocation. This is a device that was created by the agency, but some believe that they have a property interest in that allocation, and that's a protected right, and it's not unlimited as far as what the agency can do, as far as moving allocations around, taking them from one operator and giving them to another. That's tied in also to the question of credits that went on the list of issues that your board approved in an earlier matter. I think it would require a legal analysis to give you a full answer to that question. But really it does boil down to that. As long as there's agreement, whether it's joint request for transfer, the agency has broad discretion to determine what is an appropriate adjustment of allocation. The issue where you don't have both sides agreeing, whether it's in a buyer or seller or a mutual situation that was described, that's the real question. And to what extent can the agency involuntarily make adjustments, involuntarily meaning the operator has not consented to having its allocation reduced or given to another operator. I think there is a certain level of authority that the agency has, but is it unlimited? That's the issue that would need to be analyzed more thoroughly.
Okay.
It would seem that there's perhaps an administrative solution to this problem. And I mean, we've been told before that we have no ability to regulate whether people drill wells, but we can regulate what people extract from them. And if there has been a property division or a change in service, it would seem that GMA would have that ability to notify the parties involved that we are notified that there's been this change and the allocation is adjusted.
Okay, let me hear from Robert.
Robert Aranio on behalf of Crestview Mutual Water here on this one. I'd like to offer clarification about mutuals and where I think that there's a unique distinction between us and other appropriators, and that has to go with the Articles of Incorporation and how the corporation was formed. The corporation has the water rights, and we're managing those for our shareholders. So I would contest that those water rights belong to the corporation, and therefore there should be no permits issued or allowed for someone to drill a well that belongs to a mutual. It's not the individual property owner that has that right. We divvy it out to them through the use of shares and managing it, but those were actually set up when the corporation was formed in order for the corporation's viability. And that's very different from an appropriator.
But did when the corporation was formed, did the property owner forever and in perpetuity relinquish any water rights and hand those water rights to the corporation?
And the Articles of Corporation would clarify that as to where that came from.
Okay, so, all right, so it may not be true in all cases, could be true in some cases, but would a current owner have the right to make that decision in perpetuity binding on all future entities? Again, maybe that's another legal question. Let me ask you a different question. This issue is before us because obviously LPUG has brought it before us. For clarification, from your standpoint, I mean, we could literally spend a lot of time on this issue. So I want to focus on specifically what question you are asking us today to deal with. Do you want us to make some final determination? Do you want us to give it back to staff so that we can then set aside sufficient time to go into even more detail? Are you looking for specific answers on all of these items, or are you only looking for a specific answer on the last bullet item? So give me some clarification on specifically, you guys have been wanting to have this on the agenda for some time, and I want to use our time wisely. What specifically, in your mind, are you looking for today, and see if we can...
In the Las Posas Basin, we have identified a specific problem, bullet point number 4 that's on that page. Okay. And that's what we're asking you to address today. We realize that under Emergency Ordinance E, this currently is not an issue. But Emergency Ordinance E is not going to last forever. So we would ask that you go ahead and adopt this as it is presented to you for the administrative way that's handled, or that we'd like to handle it. And if you come up with something better down the road that will supersede it, then so be it. But let's not kick this down the field anymore. We've spent a lot of committee hours, LPUG committee meeting hours also to come up with this, and we think we have a method here that allows staff to be able to deal with this and make sure that there is a prevention of continuing of double dipping going forward in the Las Posas Basin. We realize it is not a significant amount of demand reduction, but it is something that we're bringing forward to you that we've identified and we agree with that should be addressed, and it would go a long way to validating our efforts and our time that we're putting in the basin in order to try and deal with issues up there.
Okay, let me, again, for clarification, I'm referencing your letter of July 20th. Based on the discussions of the above referenced meetings and the unresolved issues, 1, what are the mechanism for triggering an allocation transfer? How much allocation should be transferred? What is the approved approval process? Okay, LPUG offers the following recommended solutions for each issue. In the discussion paragraph, there's even more discussion, and then I'm trying to boil down to specifically what the proposed solution is to change administrative procedures during the well permitting process. This is on the one for triggering allocation transfer. Very simple. The board should direct staff to determine if the new well be used to supply groundwater that was previously supplied by a water provider. Okay, that's a test. If the answer is yes, the test is yes, the transfer will be required prior to issuing the well permit. If the answer is no, then obviously there'd be no problem. Agency staff and LPUG have developed a simple form that the applicant can fill out to provide the information necessary for the staff to determine. All right, so what you're saying today is you have a proposed transfer form that answers the first test, yes or no, and that staff and the agency have developed that form. How do we ensure that that form is in fact part of the process?
You integrate it with the well permit. When they come in to draw the well permit, or when the well permit is applied for, it's part of the application package that they must fill out with everything else in order to draw.
So what we'd have county, the county permitting office would have this additional form from the GMA. The county permitting process would require that the form that they were given on behalf of the GMA has been completed. That would be part of the process.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Staff okay with that as the first step?
I don't think so. We still need some clarifications on issues. I think LPUG clarified things a little bit further, but there are issues such as discontinuation of use. We're not exactly sure how that's to be defined. Is that for...
Define the word discontinuation of use.
The new well owner discontinuing taking water from the water supplier. Sometimes that's a permanent step. Sometimes the new well owner wants to keep the connection active just in case they need it.
So you're talking about if the new well owner decides he wants to unwind the agreement? Is that...
No. If the new well owner decides that, or if the new well owner's well is malfunctioning, he can then go to the previous connection that existed, the previous water supplier connection, and turn the tap on.
Okay.
Backup supply.
Okay. I see Carol got up. Do you want to address how that... Well, all right, hold on. Before we do that, I need some board guidance here. We're going down a road here of very specific issues, trying to determine what we can or cannot approve. And I need guidance from the board. Do you want us to go down this road and deal with this in this fashion, or do you want to deal with it in a different fashion? I'm trying to look for guidance so that we don't spend 5.5 hours and get nowhere at the end of that exercise. What would you folks want to do?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that you're beginning to see the multitude of possibilities as being said here, and that I hate everything to go off to a staff meeting or something, but really, I don't think in the past that the stakeholders got together with staff and tried to work it out. I mean, it's been hard enough to get it recognized and on the agenda, but I think you can see there's problems can go both ways. Now, what Director Borcher was saying, just right now, Zone is experiencing a lot of people wanting to quit the county and go to Zone. They own shares in Zone company, but they never receive Zone water. So then does the county surrender allocation to Zone to make up for the new use that's under Zone now? But what happens if they later want to go back to the county? The process is not going to be simple, and I think it deserves a certain amount of more time than us just coming up with a quick and dirty solution today.
Okay, that raises another issue. Should we ask council to determine what the level of authority we have? I mean, I understand we've made a decision in the past that we don't go inside a mutual. Are we going down the road that ultimately, to make this system work correctly, we're going to have to reach into a mutual and somehow have some rules that they're going to have to follow? I recognize they're corporations. I recognize they're entities. Do we even have the legal authority to do that? I mean, John Grether has raised that issue numerous times about what is our legal authority to jump into some of these areas. And maybe we need to have Al actually sit down and work out some scenarios and tell us, you can do this, but you can't do that. That defines a lot of what answers you're going to get out from
The
us.
biggest thing there is what I just told you a minute ago. In the case of a mutual, you have a person owns shares of that company, just as Mr. Ranio said. Okay, so those people have a vested interest, but they need to know they have a problem. And there's where I see the problem is that they don't necessarily are even aware of the issue. So because then they can demand that they get their allocation from their own mutual.
Okay, Charlotte.
I'd like to hear what Carol has to say because we've heard what other people had to say. I don't know how far we'll go in taking what people have to say, but I do not think we have enough information here. We're trying to massage it and work it and make it go, and we don't have all the information. So I think it isn't ready for us to make a decision today.
Okay.
Maybe this is one of those things that needs to go to a committee.
Well,
I don't know.
It's been at a committee 4 times. Yeah, that's the problem.
Okay.
We've had it in front of the executive committee, and I think we've come to the same conclusion that a common sense answer flies in the face of a legal authority, corporations, mutual shareholders, and a whole bunch of things. Common sense would tell you that if you've been getting water from A and you want to move all on yourself, that water ought to go to you. But if A spent a whole lot of money to develop a delivery system, and that's been Reddy's biggest issue, is, hey, I put in, based on the fact that I had to deliver this water, I have a capital structure here that has to be paid for. So you can't leave me out to dry by taking your marbles and going someplace else. I built the building. Just because you decide not to be on the 10th floor is not my problem. But I built the building based on the fact you're on the 10th floor and I still have to pay for it. And that's been Reddy's position all along.
I remember those discussions. I just don't think we have enough information today to make those decisions.
All right.
Maybe they're legal guidance as to what we can do, but based on what's here, I don't think I have enough information to make a decision.
And I would agree with you. Let me hear from Carol. You move forward, so let me...
Carol Schoen from Zone Mutual Water Company. My comments have been addressed. It isn't just the matter of a new well, it's the matter of moving the marbles from one play yard to the next. And what do we do about that? And I do believe it's become so complex now, certainly with the issues of the PTP and United today. It needs to go back to the executive committee, and we need to continue to work on it. We thought we could handle it in the Las Posas with a very simple form and just look to have something adopted for the Las Posas, and maybe that's what we do, and allow this to be part of our basin structure, and maybe it doesn't carry forward to all areas because it may not work for Pleasant Valley County or United, but maybe it works very well in the Las Posas. So that's my comment.
Here's what I would suggest then. What I would suggest is that today, at least at the board level, the board members have to give the executive committee members some guidance, because we have dealt with this issue now 4 times over a long period of time, and it is incredibly complex. And I think one of the big issues that we keep running into is some legal issues. I don't know what all of those are, Al, but I do believe that we're going to have to spend some time and energy on trying to pick our way through some of the possible legal issues, what authority we have or don't have, and how that might apply. Because it is more than drilling a well, it is moving marbles. I recognize that there are investments. I think Reddy has been very diligent in making that issue. He has a huge capital investment on behalf of the county that has to be paid for, that was predicated on certain water going through the system. I get that. How you account for that, they've used a methodology. That methodology may be correct. There are other people who may challenge it. We need to take a look at that. What else can we throw into the mix before we have this executive committee to try to move this thing down the road?
I'd like to make 3 points. Number one, we keep referring to the county's water works system, and I think it's more appropriate for us to refer to it as the residents' waterworks system, because they're the ones that are going to be stuck with this bill. And I think it creates a different sort of framework. This isn't county government that's going to be caught with this bill. If all these people walk out and it causes a problem, quote, for a ready system, it really causes a problem for all the ratepayers in Moore Park and all of that. So that's one point I want to make. Second is, it seems to me that allocations right now are a creation of Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency. They're a creation of Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency, and Fox Canyon has the authority, since we created them, has the authority to do what we want with them. Certainly that can be challenged by people who say, I have private property rights to a certain amount of water. That's always, that interchange is out there. But I think that this is an issue that cries out for some real firm leadership to try to get it solved. And that leadership can't happen if we think, well, if we think we're completely hemmed. I think we should try to say these are creations of, this is what, if Fox Canyon is in charge of pumping here, then Fox Canyon should be allowed to make decisions about what's going to happen with something that Fox Canyon created. That doesn't mean that Fox Canyon has complete control and everybody loses their private property rights, but that is the interchange that's constantly out there. That's the tension that's out there. If somebody doesn't like what Fox Canyon is doing, and Al goes, we think because this is a creation, you can do that, then that becomes something that goes to court. Finally, I think in terms of guidance for the executive committee, how you resolve this should be very much a function of our long-term solution. I think that in our last couple of meetings, we've come to a realization that trying to use irrigation efficiency as the way to allocate a scarce amount of water in Ventura County is something that we started to see how complicated and difficult that's going to be. We're going to need to come up with a fairly straightforward, understandable way to allocate a certain amount of pumping in Ventura County. And when we do that, it will then, I think, make it easier to resolve this problem. Because let's say, as Jurgen came up and said, every acre ought to get a certain amount of water. Everybody gets a certain amount of water based on the land. Well, if you do that, then as the land moves, the water moves. On the other hand, maybe we're going to do it on historical allocation. And we're going to go back to historical allocation and say, but what are we going to do with that? Bottom line is, once you fix what that amount is, we're saying we're pumping X amount, and it's going to be divided up this way, then it makes it much clearer what to do with this. Because right now we've got this gray area where you can pump based on historical allocation, and people can even use their historical allocation to get credits to pay off big fines, and then other people can pump without historical allocation, and that's what causes the whole double dipping situation that we have. That system is not going to be sustainable, I predict, when we come up with a long-term solution. Let's find out what the long-term solution is, and then you've got, I think, the guidance that you need to know exactly how to exert the leadership that is needed to try to solve this for the mutuals, for the property owners, for everybody in the county. That's my own sense of that. I don't know if it makes any sense or not.
I want to jump in here. We went down a road talking about the IAI, and that's not our subject matter. But I would disagree. The IAI is not a broken system. What was kind of broken with our allocation system was exactly what you said near the end. The historical allocation program being not necessarily equitable. Some folks ended up with higher historical allocations than others, and therefore they were generating credits. That's the nature of the problem. IAI was developed, science-based crop needs of water. Where we're at now with the emergency ordinance and how we've tweaked that IAI, that's simply a method of coming to an allocation. And it was a method used or decided upon by all the growers that took into account the investments by individuals such as Jurgen, who spent millions of dollars reducing his water use. If we would have gone to that T allocation program that we initially had kind of brought up in this ordinance, it would have been unfair to those individuals who'd made those investments. They'd have been reduced on what they reduced to. So we decided that instead we'd take this scientifically developed program and we'd whack all those numbers back by a certain percent. And if we needed to, we'd do it again. It's a very logical, very common sense way of getting to where we need to be. And it takes the historical allocation problem out of the equation entirely. It puts all of agriculture on, I don't want to get caught up in terminology, because I think when I reviewed the video of last meeting, I think the board got wrapped up in the term of efficiency. We're not in efficiency right now. We're in terms of an emergency allocation. We started at efficiency. And if we get out of this emergency ordinance, it may be that the board decides on a new method. But I'd propose to you that where we're at now isn't broken. It makes a lot of sense to a lot of people.
Well, if you follow Dave's logic, we've gotten rid of historical. We have said that you're not earning any credits on it, so we've put a restriction so there are no credits being earned. There's no historical. All cropping, if you're growing lemons, you're in the same boat as all lemon growers. The only variance is, depending on which region or which zone you're in, has a slight variation. We just approved at the last board meeting a cap on that process. So in effect, we have created, I think you're right, we have created an allocation system. It may not be the perfect one, but it is a huge step away from where we were before. The problem that we have here is that we have entities, mutuals, Crestview, a corporation, we have a public agency that have brought people into the fold as a collective unit to get water, and now we have members of that entity, whatever that entity is, that want to go off on their own. Do they have a right to go off on their own? Probably. The question is, what is their water allocation if they go off on their own? That's the question. And how do we account for that individual going off on their own so that we're not double pumping that water? That's really the fundamental problem, and it has a lot to do with our agency's authority to reach in, and maybe the reaching in is a function, do we have the authority to set allocation, and we do it that way. I don't know what the legal mechanism is, but we have to have that answer. And it has been run up and down the flagpole at the executive committee meeting 4 times. It is not an easy subject by any measure. I understand that. But I also agree with Charlotte, and I think we all agree, we don't have enough information today to make a permanent decision. So we're giving some guidance to the executive committee. Before we have the executive committee meeting, what I would ask is that, Al, you put some thought to some legal issues here. I think staff needs to clearly map out what the dilemma is, and the dilemma is, how do we ensure that we don't double dip the water process or shortchange the water process to somebody that goes off on their own? That has to be balanced with the fact that whatever entity he has left, that entity has made a capital investment, and now the building is no longer fully occupied when in fact it was supposed to be occupied, and who pays the cost of that empty space in there? That's a real issue. So I don't know how you deal with that. And I think basically we're not going to take a motion today. We're going to just give staff direction, and I think I've just summarized where we're going in that staff direction, unless you guys want to add something to that.
I guess I want to disagree with that, because I would just offer, if you listen to
You're going
Director
to disagree
Borchert,
with me or disagree with Les?
disagree with this direction based on just hearing your response. You're saying you think the irrigation efficiency is the right way for us to do the allocation. Well, if irrigation efficiency is the right way to do the allocation, then it almost becomes, it's not that critical.
Well,
whether
let
we
me
transfer
correct you, a minute, because we're not on irrigation efficiency anymore. We started at a point, we developed a new index. We want to call it efficiency, that's okay.
All right.
But we're not there now.
But that index is not based on historical allocation, correct?
Correct.
That's right.
And yet what we're talking about here is, what are we going to do in terms of the transfer of historical allocation? I don't know that you know, on the one hand, that's exactly what's being talked about here, right? Well, why do that if instead what Fox Canyon is going to do is start allocating water based on some new hypothetical index? So my point is, for you to direct staff to try to clarify the issue as much as possible, direct Al to tell you what can do and can't do with historical allocation, and then find out we're not going to use historical allocation as the long-term solution. For me, that strikes me as a colossal waste of time. So that doesn't make sense. That, you know, whatever it is that we're going to use as the allocation process is what needs to get transferred, you know, in these conversations. And then if I could, just with the other side of it, I mean, it sounds really good to use some kind of index that we at least started with from irrigation efficiency, right? Some kind of index. But in the last months, we've had enormous problems trying to answer the question, how do you do that? Do you include all water or not? And so, you know, you weren't here for that discussion, but do you include all water in efficiency? Because if you do, you get one kind of, you know, answer in terms of efficiency. If you don't, you get another, and that influences the long-term solution that we're going to come up with, which then influences this. So that's my point.
Let me clarify, because I don't think we're that far apart, and I may have said it wrong. So let me waffle. I'm not going to waffle, but I believe that the IAI is a significant improvement to the previous system that allowed you to take on historical, earn credits, or go efficiency and expand your usage with no end in sight and not earn credits. I think we've moved away from a system that served us well over a period of time but had inherent flaws, and as we got ourselves into this problem, we've moved to a different system. And that's part of the emergency ordinance. I believe, for me, the long-term solution is we need to get out of the emergency ordinance into a permanent solution, and that in fact is another discussion. If IAI, if we run it up and down the flagpole, and IAI is in fact a workable long-term solution, then it is a solution. If IAI is not the long-term solution and it has to come to a fixed amount that we discussed at the last board meeting, then that's what the solution will be. So I agree with, when I said I agree with Dave, I do agree that the IAI is an allocation system that is better than our previous system. I'm not totally convinced, because of the discussions we had at the last board meeting and others, that it's actually the permanent answer. And I'm not closing off the discussion to have a permanent answer. Whatever that permanent answer is, a flat, fixed baseline that everybody lives with, somebody has proposed a fixed baseline that everybody lives with. Anybody that pumps over that baseline will pay that delta in surcharges to help buy the replenishment water as needed. All of those, to me, are on the table. So that may be another priority discussion we have, as how do we get out of emergency ordinance E into a more permanent ordinance. The question still comes up. If you go to a fixed number, an acre and a half is the fixed number across the board, regardless of where you are. Acre and a half, as I think some people have proposed. What happens when you leave a mutual and you get your acre and a half, and the mutual is docked an acre and a half? Is that fair, given the fact that the mutual has invested for that acre and a half? How do they recover that investment? That's the problem that the county is facing. Does that individual that moved from the mutual to his own not start at an acre and a half, if that's the number, but starts at 1 acre for a period of time, so that the mutual or the entity has the ability to adjust their costing structure to compensate for that? These are complicated issues. And so I can see how you could interpret that I've locked 100% into what Dave has said, but I think we need to take it to the next step. I agree that the IAI is a definite improvement over the previous system. I'm not convinced it's the permanent system. We need to get on with that process. Either one of those require us to understand what is our legal authority to dictate to the county on behalf of its constituents, to dictate to the mutuals on behalf of their constituents, to dictate to shareholders on the behalf of their constituents what the rules are going to be. I think that's an unknown question, and maybe that's one of the things that I'm looking for when staff does that. But it doesn't preclude the other things that I talked about. Again, I had said at the last meeting on the 15th, I thought that by the end of the first quarter, we ought to have some sense of what the new system ought to be to replace Ordinance E. I think that's a very aggressive schedule. I get that. But that needs to be factored in when you factor your recommendations to the executive committee. Maybe we should say it that way. If the IAI does not work as a solution to the long-term problem of moving out of Emergency Ordinance E into a permanent ordinance, what is the alternative? If IAI, in fact, will work as the long-term solution of moving out of Ordinance E into a permanent solution, you're going to have to be able to explain that to Steve and others that are questioning that methodology of how it works. So it's going to be a big question.
Can I just say that forcing everybody to move to it beginning August 1st doesn't give us information by sometime in October to have an idea of what a permanent solution would be. I just don't think less than 2 months is long enough to look at it.
And I think you're right. And it may be that my timetable of the first quarter of next year is aggressive. My fear is that if we go much later than that, we won't have time to put it in play, and then typically we set pump charges. United sets its pump charges beginning that cycle for the following year. That tends to be where our water year starts. It's the beginning of another strawberry cropping pattern. People need to know the rules of the game going into that. That's one of the reasons I said it.
Right, but looking at October, November, December, sometime in there only gives you a certain area for certain crops that are grown at a certain time of the year. And that's the absolute end of when they'll be able to know anything, to be able to put recommendations in for us to look at it, send back, look at it again, and have something adopted by the end of the first quarter of next year. So I just think it might be considered an aggressive timetable. I think it's maybe an impossible timetable.
Then we will have to adjust it.
We'll have to see.
We'll have to see. We'll have to adjust it,
Yeah. Chair, just to clarify, so that irrigation allowance filing won't come in until September or October of 2015. That's when the crop year will end July 31st.
No, but you're going to get a filing in February of next year.
We'll get the extraction reports of next year.
You'll get an extraction report of next year, so you'll at least have that. And if it's purely impossible to meet the first quarter of next year, obviously this board is going to recommend that we adjust that. I understand that. But I want to make sure that we telegraph to everybody that Emergency Ordinance E has a limited life. We agreed to that. That was what we agreed to. And we need to get on with the process of figuring out what the permanent solution is. And a lot of these particular items will all come together, hopefully at the same time. I don't know, but that would be my goal. My recommendation to staff was...
Chair, if I might interrupt just briefly, I think there's a solution to your desire for a legal opinion, and I think it's proper. We don't need to call it a certain type of allocation. Our question is really, does GMA have the authority to move allocations of any kind among parcels, among whatever the terminology is? So Mr. Bennett was mentioning that he didn't think it made sense to go from, if we're going to change historical allocation, then why would we care about having an opinion about it? I think it's more of a grander scheme of any allocation. If we have, do we have the ability to do that or not? I think that's a valid question.
Okay. Al, we've thrown the word legal around and given you a whole bunch of things to do, and I don't see a big grin on your face. Is this an impossible task?
No, not an impossible task, but in terms of what action your board can take today, there are three options that are listed in the board letter, with some modification made. One of those may be in line with the discussion that your board has had. I would also maybe just add to my response to the earlier question, there are really two places you can focus. One is what to do about the existing historical allocation, and that I think is the more complicated issue because of the possible argument that an allocation is in some sense an entitlement, and as the chair has mentioned, some suppliers have relied on that in order to make certain investments in their systems. So that's the more complicated issue, but the other possible area focuses on this creation of a new allocation, and that's where this issue of the IAI has come up. In other words, agricultural operators have the option of applying for an allocation or an allowance under that system, and that would be a new allocation that they didn't previously have, and I think your board's discretion to allow or approve that as part of a new well or a new operator's allocation is much broader than what to do about the existing historical allocation that the supplier may have had. But to answer the chair's question, no, it's not an impossible task. It would require some analysis of what the different options are, and it may not be an absolute. One possibility with regard to the historical allocation is it may be that that's not something that's done immediately, that there would be an analysis of whether the supplier in fact has some stranded investment that's at risk if his allocation is lost because an operator has gone off his system. So there could be a wide range of options for your board to consider, but they certainly do get more complicated. And I guess the last point I would add is since the entire allocation system that the agency is operating under is in sort of a state of flux, I wonder if the best approach might be to fold this issue into this broader discussion of what this long-term sustainable plan ought to be for the agency.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Recommendation.
Yeah.
If I could clarify again, though, I think just answering the simple question, does GMA have the authority to move allocations between parcels? It seems to be kind of a yes or no answer. If there's any gray area, then I think then we back away from that concept. We don't want to put ourselves in a position of legal challenge, but if we have the authority to regulate allocations or to determine allocations, it would seem that when there's a change in ownership of parcels, then we could redistribute those allocations. Maybe that's being oversimplified, but
Could I suggest this? Actually, both questions are, that suggestion is good that I just think we heard from Al, which is item 2 on staff. Roll this into the long-term solution, but we do need to have the answer to this question ultimately whenever we're going to deal with this, and that is, does GMA have this authority? So I would suggest that besides we adopt staff's recommendation 2 there, which is roll this into the long-term solution, but at the same time ask our counsel to try to give us the best opinion that he can in terms of whether we have the ability, the GMA staff, to transfer allocations.
correct, because I don't think it's a question of what we do with historical allocations at this point or any particular type or sub-allocation or whatever. It's just the grand question.
If we don't have the ability, then change it.
Regardless of what you call it, it's an allocation.
Yes.
Mike, do you want to say something?
Yeah, well, it just seems to me, and I apologize for feeling this way, but the exec committee, having looked at it 4 times now, you're telling me, The problem I see is that this is really a rather intense, big issue, and I can see where in the committee it's very difficult. I think it's beyond the committee scope, frankly. I really think it's more of a legal issue, and I think it goes beyond perhaps what our average council requests are. I think somebody who's tightly tied to water case law needs to be involved, not beyond the scope of normal council, because we're really affecting people's whole financial life when we deal with this, which is why for a long time I felt one of the answers to your HA issue is some sort of a cap so that we don't have to destroy the whole process. I mean, just because we don't like termites in the house means we have to burn the whole house down. And I really think that we have to watch out in a grand scheme of things, completely rearranging the whole deal, because we're going to mess up a lot of stuff that's happened in the past. Finishing the IAI should not be characterized as something that the farmer earns. I mean, this was the limit placed on him for what he might do that 6 months or whatever time it took. You plow that celery crop under, it's not an allocation you've earned. That was an opportunity to produce that crop for that period of time with that maximum amount of use. It's not an earned thing. You don't keep it. You don't get it.
And that's one of the great advantages of it.
Yes,
You don't get credits.
and you're not accumulating a credit at all on that. It's a mechanism of restriction, not allocation.
But right now, our current system is we have that, and you're still getting credits for not using yours.
Well, that's true, and I think that's this happens in zoos. You happen to house a donkey and a zebra, and you get a zonkey. And so we really.
He's a veterinarian. You got to go with these jokes, folks. They don't get any better.
I see it's a hybrid, non-functional.
I heard that a camel was a horse designed by a committee. That's what I had.
Well, as long as it's not the executive committee.
Is that what we have?
Let's do, if I may make a suggestion then. Let's do this. There are some legal issues that I think need to be addressed, and I think Dave is trying to summarize it down to a very narrow question initially. As I read through this list of recommendations, table this matter for consideration after, I don't think it's an issue that can be tabled. I think it's a combination of 2 and 3, because it is part of a long-term solution, and I think you're going to have to get the stakeholders involved, and it's just going to require that, so it's a combination of 2 and 3. And what I would, Tully, what I would recommend is that we do have some money in the budget for outside counsel, and I think Al and staff, you guys need to make a decision. If it's something that you think is fairly straightforward and you can answer the question, then answer the question. If you jump into an area where you want some additional guidance, we have money that allows us to seek some outside counsel. That's what the money is there for on these kinds of questions. Use it wisely. I would suspect that this is what attorneys do a lot of times, is they go out and get a second and third opinion. So use it wisely. With regards to being in front of the executive committee 4 times, it may be that on certain aspects of the questions that come out of council's recommendations or your own determinations, that there are certain finite questions that should be in front of the operations committee, or maybe it should be in front of the finance committee. We have 3 committees. Let's use them wisely. And I think I'll speak for you. I don't have any giant desire to jump into an executive committee and bang my head against the wall again, because I've done it 4 times and I've come out with a headache. So if we can have other committees have an equal headache, I'm okay with that. But if the answer is that it needs to be at the executive committee, so be it. If the answer is it needs to be at so be it. So I am basically giving guidance, because this issue plays to the long-term solution, because at some point in time, emergency ordinance E is going to have to come undone, and we're going to have to either make IAI the permanent fix, or some hybrid, or some completely new entity, and the fundamental question will still be there. Can you transfer the allocation under that system? So tackling this issue, we're going to have to keep pushing it forward. we can't kick the can down the road. We're going to have to deal with it. So that would be my recommendation. And I don't know, do we need a motion on that, or is it simply direction to staff as an action item? It's just direction to staff. All right, you've heard what I've said to Tully and staff. Any board member have any problem with that as the direction to staff? Okay? All right, are we okay with that? All right, the next item is the executive committee report. You have it before you. Can I have a motion to receive and file?
Executive officers report?
Executive officers report, I'm sorry.
Move to receive and file.
Second. And a motion and a second. Hearing no objection, it's approved. Next meeting is September 24th. Thank you.
I forgot to hang my parking pass on my mirror.
Oh, yeah. Well, I tried to beat the 3 hours. Okay, local area by, okay, that's me.
Okay, so
Today is 8/27/14, right? There you go. Okay, hold on. I'm going to give you this whole packet. This one here.
I don't know if she told you, but she negotiated a better price for our color pictures. So I meant to say that I didn't know if Supervisor Bennett to hear this, because it's his employees that cut us a better dinner.
Well, he ought to know. My 9-year-old is in advanced math, and one of the things they're doing is